And as Danny mentioned, this session is being recorded. We are fortunate enough to have Bonnie Benson on with us today, and she is on the Workday Enterprise Project team and is really helping to lead a lot of the Workday work. As you might imagine, with the launch just a few short weeks away, her time is incredibly valuable. And so to be able to steal her for an hour, we are very grateful. But this recording is going to be, as Danny mentioned, leveraged probably across the university for other units that will have similar student hiring needs. And so we are grateful for that opportunity to be the pilot test group. So again, we are here today to talk about student employee management with Workday going live soon. As you might imagine, there are going to be some changes to the way that we manage student employees in Workday and the way that we hire student employees. And so that's really the intention of today's session. We have, in addition to having Bonnie on the line, you've heard from Danny. So Danny is our resident change coordinator for Workday. You've seen lots of notes, and hopefully you're leveraging the great activities that he is sending out to do in the lab tenant. If you haven't, I would certainly recommend that you take a moment to do some of his weekly challenges that he's sending. I think those have been incredibly helpful, and it's a great way to practice before we go live. In addition, we have Randall on the line as well and in this session, and he's going to lead a portion of this. Most of you, if not all of you, are very familiar with Randall. He is our resident student employee expert and a knower of all things, as I like to say. So I will kick us off, but this is going to be the group that's going to kind of walk us through today. As I mentioned, we are certainly going to be sharing lots of information. We're going to be providing opportunities for you to test in the system. If you don't want to test, if you don't want to kind of go through the lab tenant as we're speaking, you'd rather just absorb the information, that's absolutely okay and may be preferred for some folks. We're going to send an activity after the session for folks to be able to leverage. So if you want to log into the lab tenant, Danny put the information in the chat and you can kind of follow along, but certainly that's not required and is not necessary to get the information today. So with that, let's go ahead and start talking about the agenda and some of the things that we're going to cover. So we are going to start today by talking about changes specifically to student hiring practices. So the process is going to look and feel a little different in Workday versus today. And so Randall's going to spend a bit of time, we'll see a slide where we're really going to walk through what those changes are going to be and maybe ways that we're going to mitigate some of the challenges that we might see with those changes. We're going to talk a little bit about student job requisitions and how to post a new student position. So Bonnie is going to not only kind of walk us through what's the process for posting, she's going to demo it as well so that we have an opportunity to see that live. We're going to spend some time talking about the screening and offering process for student candidates. This I think is going to be something that will be a little different, but in one sense, but I know that all of us are having, screening conversations with students. The system is just set up in a way where it makes it more of a process. And like the job requisitions, that'll be something that we talk about and we show on the screen as well. We're going to spend some time on time tracking, where we are learning more about how students will enter time and how, as a student supervisor, you will approve time in Workday, and then any nuances that would need to happen or you would need to know there. Lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about how you terminate students in the system. And so this would be for voluntary terminations, and we'll talk a little bit about when you need to do so. So without further ado, we are going to I'm going to turn it over to Randall, who's going to speak a little bit to the changes for student hiring.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk a little bit here about some of the big changes that you'll notice when Workday launches. I don't want to spend too much time here so that we have more time for Bonnie to do some live demos. And don't forget to submit your questions over in the chat so that we can get those answered as we go along. So one of the big changes that you'll notice is all of our student jobs will be required to be posted in order to accept applications on Workday. So here we have that student jobs will be posted for at least 7 days. We are asking for at least 7 days. That's not necessarily written in stone as a requirement, but as a best practice, we should be posting our student jobs for at least 7 days. There is a process for getting those jobs posted, which supervisors will be responsible for, and Bonnie's going to go through all of those details coming up in just a couple of minutes. A word of warning, though, as you're getting your jobs posted, and there's a series of approvals that they go through, it can take up to about 7 days for the job to actually get posted. So you want to, as you're thinking about your student hiring needs, you want to take those two things into account. It could take up to 7 days for your job to get posted, and also it should be posted for about 7 days. So you're going to have about 2 weeks of lead time before you're going to be able to really hire students, which is something a little bit different for a lot of people. I know that many of you find your students on your own and are used to just submitting a hire request and getting them hired right away. Workday is going to require us to add a little bit more time into that process. Along the same lines, students will have to submit an application in Workday in order to be hired. So if you have found students that you're interested in hiring and they're interested in your position, you want to make sure that once your job is posted, that they actually submit an application in Workday, because they're going to have to do that in order to be hired. I see Hallie's question there about if you already have a student in mind, do you have to post it for 7 days? We can be a little bit flexible on that. It does have to get posted. Our best practice is going to be 7 days, but if you have a special need, we can talk about that a little bit more. In Workday, supervisors are going to work with an HR consultant, which is me, and also a talent acquisitions consultant to post, screen, and hire your jobs. So this will be a little bit different in that there's going to be another person more closely involved in the hiring process along with you. This is kind of a benefit because it can take some of the work off of your plate. So in order to get your position posted, let's say you're drafting a brand new student position, you're going to work with me on developing that position description, revising it, making sure that it's ready to go. And then once you're ready to get the job posted, you'll submit that posting in Workday. And from there on out, you'll work with a talent acquisition consultant to get the job posted. The talent acquisition consultant will screen applicants for you, send you applicants into your Workday inbox, and then they'll also initiate the hire process for you. We learned yesterday that our talent acquisition consultant is likely to be Zach Tolley, who most of you already know because he was our contact at the OAA Service Center. So that we'll have a familiar face along in the process with us. This will be welcome news to those of you who hire WorkStudy students. We're no longer using federal WorkStudy referral forms. Those are going to go away with Workday. Instead, when you're posting your job, you'll be able to indicate on the job posting if you're able to accept federal WorkStudy students. And in actuality, all of our student jobs should be federal WorkStudy eligible. So that's going to make the process a little bit easier. You don't have to have your student hunt down a federal WorkStudy job referral form anymore.
Rando, I think I'll add one quick thing here. We learned yesterday that with federal WorkStudy students, that's actually part of the TA process when they're looking at candidates, is they will help us identify and match federal WorkStudy students to our position. So I think that'll take some of the legwork off of student supervisors. So that I think was a big win. So I wanted to make sure that we shared that.
Yep, absolutely. In Workday, students who you decide to hire are going to receive an offer letter that they have to sign in Workday when they start the hiring process. The talent acquisition coordinator will take care of that. It's not really something you have to worry about, but just something to be aware of. And then finally, this will be welcome news to everybody. We no longer have to terminate students at the end of spring semester if we know that they're going to come back to work for us in the fall. So that will cut down on the amount of hiring that you have to do at the beginning of fall semester, which will be great for everybody. We will say that if you know a student isn't returning in the fall, or they're not sure if they're going to return in the fall, you should go ahead and terminate them so that they don't get lost in the system. But if you definitely know that they're coming back in the fall, it's okay to leave them on over the summer. So that's just some of the big highlights. Let's get into some of the more process changes, and I will turn it over to Bonnie.
Sure, great. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much, Kristen and Randall, for hosting me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to pilot this component here. You're all kind of my guinea pigs today, and I'm just interested to hear about the questions and thoughts on your mind. And so let me walk you through what the job request or job requisition process looks like for a student employee. So here you have the process flow, and I apologize if the writing is a little bit small, but we will be sending out these slides after this session so you can take a closer look. So where this starts is you'll see this gray box up at the top. The process starts even before you get into Workday. So the manager who is looking to hire the student employee will start to have those conversations with the HR consultant, HRBP, unit college leadership, and finance to make sure that all of the unit college procedures are being followed, and they'll be able to discuss the hiring needs with those individuals. Once those conversations have been had and everybody is aligned, then the process begins in Workday where the manager or manager liaison will initiate the job requisition in Workday. Once the job requisition is submitted, it will go to the HR consultant who will then approve and review the job requisition. At that point in time, if there's a need, they can add in an additional reviewer such as the senior fiscal officer for the college or unit. From there, if the job requisition is flagged as federal work study, and I'll show you what that looks like in the system in a little bit, federal work study will go ahead and review and approve the job requisition, and they will also assign it to the appropriate FWS funding organization if the requisition is designated as FWS, excuse me. After that, it'll get routed to the talent acquisition consultant who will post the job rec for students to start to apply to. Okay. So any questions or anything else, Randall, Kristen, you want to add to this before I open up the system and we can take a look at what this process looks like? Okay.
Whoops, sorry,
All
I was
right.
on mute. Sorry, Bonnie. You have to have at least one person on every call, right, that talks when they're on mute. So I've done that today. The one thing that I would add here is when we're thinking about, posting job requisitions, we have many folks on the call that will hire multiple students. So I'm thinking, we have Brent, we have some of our folks in circulation that have, they're hiring multiple students for the same role. The great news is you really only have to post one job requisition for multiple. We can add multiple positions to that. So if you are a supervisor that hires maybe 10 or 20 of the same position, you only have to go through this process one time. And there's a step where you will add how many postings, positions that you need. So I think that's a helpful bit of information to share.
Great. Yeah, Kristen, I'll actually show you that field in which you'll enter in that number today too. So yeah, perfect. Okay, before I actually open up Workday, there's one thing I wanted to do just for kicks. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about I have two screens set up here in my home office, and I want to show you what's on the screen that you can't see. It's not any big secret or anything like that. It is the Administrative Resource Center. So as I'm talking to you, as I'm kind of looking from one screen to the other, I'm looking at Workday. I'm also looking at the job aid. So I'm going to pull up the job aid I'm going to be using. So the Administrative Resource Center, I mean, I know that I've seen some publications from Danny. I know the link is in some of those. If you have not bookmarked this, I would definitely recommend it. To get to the job aid for this particular activity, you can click on the W for Workday. You can go to Workday for managers and leaders. And then if I click in the job aid section here, I'm actually going to look for the create a job requisition job aid here. Where did it go? Create a job requisition for new position. One other thing that that's just a little tidbit as well. We also did a recording of this first part of the demo. It's also in the Administrative Resource Center. So if you just want to see the job requisition portion for students, we do have that video also posted here. So this is the job aid I'm going to be having on my second screen. It goes step by step through this process, calling out specifically some of the flags about the federal work study, special things to do for students, etc. So I recognize this is a little bit longer of a job aid, but it is information rich and it will help you a ton. So I just want to let you know, this is what I'm using to do the demo today. Okay, so I'm getting this set up on my other screen here. And now I'm going to bring up Workday, the moment you all have been waiting for. I know. Okay. I can find it. Here it is. All right, so here I am in Workday. And I am actually in our OSU training environment as indicated by this little O up here. I'm in the system as Lorena Smith. And Lorena Smith is looking to hire a student for this upcoming semester for her team. She's actually looking to hire a security student assistant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off just by typing in up here at the top, create job rec. And there pops up, create the job requisition task. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now what this does is it brings up the first screen that says create job requisition. Now here you'll see here this first tab here that says supervisory organization has a red asterisk. When you are hiring students, this is going to be pretty important to remember here. This right now, if you all remember from your manager training, students are hired into the job management supervisory organization. That is indicated by the letters JM. So I need this, if I'm going to hire a student, to say my name -JM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to type in Lorena Smith. Remember, I'm logged in as Lorena. And I'm going to have two options pop up. One is the college, this first one, which is our position management organization. And then I see the JM, the job management organization. That's where the students will get hired into. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one. Okay. I think if you take away anything from this demo today, it's that piece of information right there. So next, I'm going to take a look here. It says worker type is employee. I'm going to keep that because as a reminder, the term employee is used for staff, faculty, physician, and student employees. So I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now my first screen comes up with recruiting information, and I'm going to start to enter in some details. So I'm going to click the pencil. And here it says, this is where that place that Kristen mentioned, you can actually have one job requisition for multiple openings. Here you can change this number from 1 to 100. 100 is the maximum that's allowed by Workday. But if you have multiple types of students, for example, if you have, multiple front desk workers, file room assistants, etc., you can actually change this number to the exact number of positions that you have. The other thing to keep in mind is if you have students with different responsibilities, you'll want to create different job requisitions, and your talent acquisition consultant can provide you guidance for that. So for the purposes of today's demo, I'm going to keep this as 1. Next, I have to select my reason for this position. I can have it as planned or unplanned, but I'm going to do planned, and I was already planning on filling this anyways. The next red asterisk field is recruiting instruction, and this is going to be an active posting. Then I get to the recruiting start date, and the recruiting start date we recommend to leave as today's date, which is also, as you can see, is defaulted in. And the reason why is because no recruiting activities such as posting, screening, interviewing, hiring can start until this date happens. And you can't backdate this. So it needs to be today's date or future dated, but we recommend today's date. Targeted hire is the earliest eligible date to hire, and it's recommended we make this today's date. unless you, of course, are proactively posting for future jobs.
Hey, Bonnie, we have a couple of questions that I just want to make sure before we get too far along. We have Christine who's asked if she wants to follow along in the lab tenant, but her supervisory organization did not work. What should she use if her name did not work?
Yeah, so
could she use the same that you're using right now?
She would have to go into the training tenant, Kristen, and as a follow-up on the activity sheet that you're going to send, we'll have login instructions.
Okay, so why don't I'll copy and paste those login instructions here as well in the chat, and then if that's okay.
That's fine. Okay, so any other questions, Kristen, before I continue on this screen?
There was a question around what happens if you don't know how many students you might need. That we have some folks that hire until they fill the schedule. Do you have any advice on that, Bonnie? I would probably imagine we would only want to post for the number that we know for sure that we're going to have, and then maybe do additional postings for additional positions that we might need. Anything that you would add there?
I think that sounds right, but I don't want to guess, Kristen, so that might be a question I need to follow up on and get back to you.
Yeah, Patty, so we'll take that away and get back to this group with that information.
Yeah, and Kristen, if you don't mind just jotting down these open questions, so that way I can circle back to them and we can make sure that we get them posted when we post this video as well. Cool. All right. So the target date, so that's the next piece. So the target end date. This is the date in which the position will wrap up. So I will say that an end date must be selected for student positions. And this will not terminate the students automatically, but what it will do, it will help generate a report for monitoring and being able to update end dates as those dates come closer to the current date. So because I'm trying to do a hire for the spring semester, I'm just going to put the target end date as the end of May. Okay. Pause here. I think there might be some questions. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep going. Okay, so then I'm going to go to the next screen. And this takes me to the job section. So this is where I'm going to start to enter in some details about the specific job. So I click the pencil and the job posting title. So this is what will get posted in the system. So this is going to be the security student associate job, or excuse me, security student assistant. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying that. Okay, post that here. Justification. So this is the business reason for the hire. And Randall, Kristen, if there's specific guidance in terms of what you would expect here, you know, of course, that's what you can share with the folks on the line. The job profile. So this will be a student assistant job profile. So I'm going to type in the word student and hit enter, and will give me all of the options for those that have a student in them. So you'll see here there's 52 results. And I am looking for this student assistant one there. So I click that. Okay. So I continue to scroll down the page. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for either the red asterisk fields or fields that are indicated in the job aid that are required. So the next field is the job description field. The job aid tells me that I need to enter in a job description for the position being created. So I actually have an older PD for this position. So what I'm doing is I'm just cutting and pasting information from that PD right into the job description. Okay. And so here, as I scroll down, I come to the additional job description area. And this is going to be important for students because I did hear Kristen mention that most of your hires are likely federal work study eligible. So in the job aid, there's actually some particular text that you can just take from the job aid and place in here. about federal work study jobs, just to provide some additional information about who can fill these types of roles. So then I continue to scroll down and I see some more red asterisk fields. It says worker subtype. So I'm going to click on this little prompt and worker type. And so all students are temporary fixed term employees. So I click that. The primary location is where the student will primarily work. So I will type in Thompson for the Thompson Library, and that comes up. You'll see the primary job posting location defaults in. Then I come down to scheduled weekly hours. The default is 40, but for students, they can work no more than 20 hours a week. So I'm going to go ahead and have to update this. So for this particular position, the scheduled weekly hours is actually 10. Okay. And then I also have to select a work shift. So for this particular role, this is typically a first shift role. Now, if there's a field along the way that I forget to fill in, I will get a note at the end to tell me to go back to those fields. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And the next section is this, this qualification section. So one of the things I want to bring your attention to, and this is also mentioned in the job aid, there are these notes at the top of the screen that you'll want to pay attention to when you're entering this in. It says, if creating a new position, include the breakdown of duties in the responsibilities section. Oh, excuse me, is there a question? Okay. So job duties and responsibilities should be listed in order of importance with the percentage of the employee's time that will be spent performing each. All other sections are to be left blank at this time. So I'm going to go scroll down to the responsibilities section. And once again, I have a couple of responsibilities that I pulled out of the PD. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut and paste it here. And then I would also enter in the breakdown of work here, similar to how it's currently listed on PDs in terms of what is the percentage of time, and I would enter that here as well.
Hey, Bonnie, I have a question, if I could. I'm just trying to understand. So basically, we are going to have to input the job description each time. It's not like the old days when we would just be able to select a number and it would automatically come in. We would have to input this info each time.
So in the beginning, you'll have to do a lot. You'll have to do some input. But the idea is that in the future, some of this information will be defaulted in with Career Roadmap. But right now, in the beginning, we may be entering some items from perhaps other documents where it's already written out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so now we're on the compensation screen, and this is where we're going to enter in. We're going to take a look at the organizations in terms of the funding pieces, and we're also going to take a look at other key items. So I'm just going to kind of walk through this and scroll down here. So I see here that I have these items, cost centers, funds. So this is how the student is, where the funding for the student position is coming from. As I scroll down here, one thing to point out, and I don't know, I'm going to call this out for those that are watching this video at home. Time entry method, it will default as Workday time calendar, but for students in student life, in A&P, and athletics who use external time clocks, such as the new Dormakaba clocks, you will indicate that here that the student will enter their time that way. So I just want to call that out. You'll also see these FWS fields as well. So I'm going to click into them just to show you what this looks like. But here's where you can enter in this particular information about, about the federal work study. And clicking into these will also route this to the federal work study team for their approval through this process. So you'll see that there. And then the funding is which federal work study program is this funded through. Okay, my computer is spinning here.
Bonnie, if I could jump in for just a quick second, as we're talking
Great.
funding, we'll be sending out some information after the session with a student hiring checklist, and in there is a link to a funding chart. So you'll be able to take a look at that as a supervisor, knowing that you work, in a specific org and, department, and find those things on the chart to be able to verify that your funding's correct on the submission.
Awesome. Thanks, Randall. All right, so now we're on the attachment screen. Once again, you see the note up here. If you have additional documentation you want to attach, you can. It's not required. I'm going to keep going. Now I'm going to go to the compensation section. So once again, you'll want to just review the note up here, but as we scroll down, you'll see that there's some guidelines and around kind of what should that range look like. So I get down to the hourly section and I click the pencil. And here's where I'm going to enter in the compensation for this role in terms of that hourly rate. And so I'm going to type in, just to keep things simple, I'm just going to type in $13. And everything else defaults in US currency, hourly rate, hit the check mark. I'm going to move on. The one thing that I will mention here is that if you are creating a job requisition for a graduate student, a campus fellow, you would not enter in compensation. These particular workers, they're going to be paid through period activity pay, and that will come later in the recruit to hire process. You'll work with talent acquisition and fiscal staff within the college and unit to be able to provide this information for the period activity pay. So I just want to call that out. That's also referenced in the job aid if you do come across that. So I'm going to hit next. This is the assigned roles section. This allows you to assign the recruiter if you know who the recruiter is. If not, no big deal. It's not required to move this forward. So I'm going to keep on clicking next. And so now I'm on the review page here, which will let me review, make sure I have everything entered in correctly. And I'm going to hit submit to see if I have any error messages. And I do have one error. I'm going to take a look at what this says. And it's asking me to update the function value. So it's telling me exactly what it wants. It says the appropriate function value is FN 111 academic support. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for this function. Okay, where is that? All right, function value. Okay. Here it is, function. So the error message, I can pull it right back up to make sure I got it. FN 111. Got it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click the pencil. Going to remove this by clicking the X, and then it tells me FN 11111. Oopsies. Hit enter. And there it is, academic support. And then click the check mark. And then I will hit submit. And it says up next. Yep.
I was going to add one thing here really quickly. I know that there is a field there that defines shift, and we have a lot of folks on this call that have students that work a variety of shifts, first, second, and third. That shift field is not required. So if you are a supervisor that has students across varying shifts, you can leave that blank and create one job rec for all of those positions, and then in that description field, you can identify that it's varying shifts, and then you can have the conversations with students kind of through that interview process around what shifts you will fill them for. So I think that's important information, that if you're a supervisor, you don't necessarily have to create a job requisition for each shift.
Yeah, great call out. The other thing I see in the chat, it says, is there a way to indicate that the position is only for FWS students? So in the beginning, when I was creating the job description, it says additional job description. You'll go ahead and you'll paste it, and you'll say that this role is only eligible for federal work study students. If you take a look at the job aid, the exact text is in the job aid for you to cut and paste into this job requisition. Okay, so I realized I wanted to just kind of give you a feel for what that was. I was going a little bit slower than I might go through. And the first time you do it, it may take you a little bit, but it does pick up as you get more comfortable doing this. Okay, so that actually wraps up the demo of the create job requisition portion. What I wanted to do next is give you guys a look at what the next part of the process is. And this is the student screen and offer part of the process. So we've created the job requisition, it's been submitted, and it's been posted. So now what happens next? So the talent acquisition consultant and the manager will start to screen candidates. They'll do their interviews and ensures the eligibility of the candidates, and will select the finalists. In a few minutes, I will show you what that view looks like as a manager, what that screening process will look like. The talent acquisition consultant, the manager liaison, and the cost center manager, they will follow unit guidelines and procedures and discuss compensation for the finalists. Then the offer process begins. The talent acquisition consultant will initiate the offer within Workday. The HR consultant will review it, they'll edit it and approve it, and then it goes back to the talent acquisition consultant. The talent acquisition consultant is going to take a look and see, does a student have multiple jobs? Are they wanting to change jobs? Are they within the allotted hours? So they'll take a look at those details, and if anything is amiss, they'll inform the student that they need to contact the manager to have that conversation about the scheduled weekly hours is a good example. Then the talent acquisition consultant will go ahead and create an offer letter within the Workday DocuSign. The candidate will sign the offer letter, their background check will begin, and the talent acquisition consultant will go ahead and disposition the candidate and move them to ready to hire. Okay. Kristen, Randall, anything else you want to add on this while I bring up the system to show what the screen part looks like?
I think the one thing I would add is I know that we have a lot of supervisors who either have students already in mind that have maybe worked for them in the past, or they might have identified a student that they want to hire. What we want to make sure that everybody understands is while all positions will now need to be posted, that doesn't prevent you from still going through the same interview process or still having the same conversations that you would otherwise have. The difference in the future state will be that you will just, once you're ready to make an offer, instead of doing that by yourself and then submitting an HRA, you'll communicate that with the talent acquisition consultant, and they will be the ones to actually make that offer. So just to make that really clear, I know we have a lot of people that that might be on their mind is how will this work? And I know Bonnie just walked through the step-by-step, but that would be my ad. That we're not taking that kind of responsibility away from supervisors. They'll just be communicating that with the talent acquisition consultant instead of human resources, instead of Randall or I.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Okay, so let's say your job is posted, the talent acquisition consultant is starting to screen folks for you, and they're starting to send people your way. So what you'll do is you'll actually get an inbox task. This is your Workday inbox. Remember, this is where all of the actions come that need your attention. You'll also receive an email in your Microsoft Outlook saying you have an item in Workday that needs your attention. So down here, I see that I have a manager review for a student. So this is actually for a student office worker position that I've also posted. And you'll see here, there's a lot of information. So the candidate is Audrey Kasser. She's applying for requisition 266, the student office worker job. So let's see here. So here's some information about the job application itself. So just taking a look here, I can see the student's work history. I can see the history of this process and where it's gone in the process. I can see that she received an automatic message. So I have this little timeline of what that looks like in terms of this process. If the student has like education, they can enter that here. If they have any additional, say they have a personal website or something, they can also have that here as well. If they have attached their resume, it'll be under the attachment section and under this particular area. You can also type in any personal notes about the candidate that would get shared with the individuals that are involved in the hiring process. So really, it's all kind of right here at your fingertips, all the details on the candidate. So let's say, you've reviewed her information. So now what? So you'll see a couple of buttons down here in the bottom. The first one says move forward, but what else does that have there? So the manager, you can mark it as the manager review has been completed. You can move it forward, or you could say I'm not interested, or you can hold the candidate if you want to wait for additional candidates to come in and continue screening. You also have more where you can actually reassign this to somebody else for them to review, or you can also view additional details on the process. So that's what that screening part of this process looks like. Any questions? I somehow lost my Zoom chat.
I think we've got all the questions covered.
Well,
Okay.
Bonnie, I did get a direct question. What if somebody is not seeing job requisition options in the lab tenant?
If someone is not seeing job requisition option in the lab tenant, it means that they may not be indicated as a manager in the lab tenant. So they would have to, so if, say this is production, you do not have that option, you would reach out to HR Connection and they would be able to either make sure you have the manager, that manager role, or they would be able to take a closer look at your organization and make sure that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to keep moving on here because I know that we have about 15 minutes left and I want to make sure we get to the other parts too. All right, so other things that students will do is, students will be submitting their time in Workday, and this student time tracking is actually the same as if any other employee is going to be entering time into Workday. It's the same process. I just changed the title on the top here. So, but basically the employee will enter in and out times. I'm going to show you what that looks like, because I know that many of you will probably have to, when your students come in for the first time we have Workday, although they have been receiving, if they are currently a student employee, they've been receiving communications. But if they're a new employee, someone will need to show them what to do. The student will submit their timesheet, the manager will approve it, and then the employee is also notified of the approved time. Okay. So let me show you a quick look into Workday as to what this looks like. So I am going to, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to log in as one of Lorena's students that works for her.
So while Bonnie's pulling that up, I want to call out something that's in the chat. So if you're not seeing the job requisition option in the lab tenant, Kristen suggested that people wait until you get into the live version, and then let's see if the issue is still there, and then we contact HR.
Yeah, this data is a bit older. It hasn't been refreshed, I think. Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think since last fall. So let's, before we contact HR Connection, let's confirm access in the live tenant before we reach out. That said, I don't know if from a practice purpose, Bonnie, if folks want to get in and practice this, is there anything that we can do to get access, get the folks that don't have it access in the Workday in the lab tenant?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Let me just be clear. So if you are having problems in the training tenant or you're having problems in the lab tenant, please do not contact HR Connection if you're having issues with either of those environments, because those actually belong to the change management team, and we might be able to help with your questions there.
So
when we do go live,
this.
HR Connection is go ahead.
So if anybody is having trouble with the lab tenant, contact me and I will consolidate that information and forward it.
Perfect. That's even better, Danny. Thank you. if you do want to practice hiring a student, I know that Kristen and Randall they have a sheet that they're going to be sending you afterwards that gives you an environment to log in with a character that you can proxy in as and hire students for her. So that will be available to you so you can practice. Okay. So here I am in the tenant. I'm logged in as Elaine, who is a student, and I want to show you how she would enter her time. So it's really simple. It's just you look at this little time here, click on time. It will bring up the Workday time calendar where Elaine can enter in her hours. So I click this week and you'll see just a calendar that comes right up, and she can actually enter in her time. So let's say here, let's say she worked on Tuesday from, let's say, I'm gonna double click on this block. She started at 8 a.m. and she was done for her day at 12 noon. And that was just her shift. If she's going to take a meal break, she can also enter that as well, that the reason why she's ending this particular time block is for a meal, but let's just say she's out, and then she can hit OK. And so you'll see here, there's a gray block that shows her time that she worked. And so if she's done with this timesheet, all she has to do is hit submit, and it will get routed to her. So she gets a little summary here. Hit submit. And it will get routed to Lorena for her approval. So you'll see here up next, Lorena Smith, it needs her approval. So let me show you really quickly what that approval looks like. It's pretty simple. Once again, the approval will come to your Workday inbox. You'll also receive a Microsoft Outlook email that's saying that this time card is ready for your approval. So
Bonnie, while you're doing that, I just wanted to note that library students will be using Workday Web Clock or Time Clock, whichever
okay.
one. So they should still have the clock in and clock out buttons, correct?
Yes, yes. And if for those of you that want more information about the Workday time clock feature, there is a quick video and a quick job aid out that on the Resource Center as well. Okay, so for students that also submit their Workday time clock, the approvals will also come through the same way as well. So here you'll see in my inbox, I have a time entry approval waiting for me for Elaine. I can take a look at it. It tells me entries to approve. If I want more details, I can click the magnifying glass over here, and then I can just click approve. Pretty simple. Okay. All right. So the last thing I want to show you is just what terminations look like. So here I'm showing the termination process flow, and I'm not going to go step by step through this, but for students, managers can terminate students, both voluntary and involuntary. And so to do that, it's actually pretty simple within Workday. So to do this within Workday, the first thing I need to do is find the student in which I am going to terminate. So there's several ways I could do that. I could either search for them, the search bar. I could also go through my team and look at my org chart. But for the purposes of this demo, I know that I have one student, Austin, that we are ready to terminate. So here's her name here. It came up in my search, and you'll see I have the related actions button right next to her name. I can click on her name if I want to see more details about her and her role, but I can click on this here. And I will say this is a training environment, and this particular function has been giving me a little bit of trouble, but I just want to show you how you would start this, but I won't be able to show you the full end-to-end process. You'll see I have all these actions down here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look for this first for the termination. It's under the job change item, and you'll see it says terminate employee. And what I would do is I would just click on this and follow the steps that are out that Workday will walk you through. Once again, it's going to show an error message, but I just want to show you that's kind of where that will go. The reason why I'm getting an error message is because the student actually is also in process for another role. So that wraps up the demos that I had planned for today. But I want to point out that at the conclusion, like I said before, we'll send out this deck. There are some great resources for you. The Create Job Requisition Job Aid, that's what I use to create the student job requisition, that's available. The time tracking resources are also available for you. There's a time tracking for Manager's Job Aid, which goes into the time clock that Randall mentioned. And then the time entry processes for employees. This is the versions that students will use. This goes over how they would enter in their time. And then the separating an employee job aid, this is for that termination component. So you'll get this afterwards, but all these resources are available to you in the ARC.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Right.
And I will say, to build on that, following the session, Randall and I are going to send everyone all of the resources. So we're going to send out the slide deck so that you have the slide deck. We are going to send there's a new student employment university policy that's rolling out in January. So we'll make sure that everybody has that. We'll make sure that everybody has the job aids that we've covered today. And lastly, we are going to make sure that we send the activity for folks to be able to complete, to do some on your own kind of learning and playing in the system. So we do have a few minutes left. We reserved some time for questions. So while we've got Bonnie on the line, let's open it up for any questions that folks might have. We will do our best. We're still learning ourselves and understanding processes. So if we don't have the information, we will do our very best to get that and get that out to you in a recap.
So I had a quick question. If our student is already hired, we do not have to do anything else once Workday comes on then?
Correct. Now, all of that information is going to transfer into the system. So if you have students that are hired and are active in the system, I see some claps and some head nods. So I'm always excited to deliver good news. No, nothing for you to do. That information transfers.
Thank you.
Yep, it'll only be for once the system goes live for new positions or new postings that you will need.
I have a question over here. So I downloaded the app onto my phone several weeks ago, and I was just wondering when this goes live at the beginning of January, like obviously HR told us that we are permitted to enter our time for when we do our health checks in the morning. So I'm usually, 5-10 minutes to do that. So it'll be like my first time using real Workday when I'm at home. And I'm just kind of wondering, the way it's set up right now, the lab version is what's on my mobile phone. So does that automatically get us into the real version of Workday if we tap on that? Or is there something I need to do to my mobile device in order to get it onto a real version?
Yep. So when we go live, so right now the mobile, if you're practicing using the mobile app, it's probably configured for the lab tenant. When we go live, you'll just need to redirect the mobile app so it's going to the right place. So when you log in on day one, you'll see a little pop-up over on the right-hand corner, and it says, "Did you know that Workday has a mobile app?" And there's a little screen that will pop up with a QR code. You can scan it, and then your mobile app will be reset to work with production.
Wait a minute. Now, how am I scanning this QR code? If I'm at home and I don't have home internet, so I don't have a PC set up there. So, it's like, when you say scan, it's like I used my phone to scan the screen on my work PC in order to get that lab tenant to come up. I tried typing in that OSU code and it couldn't find OSU. So I ended up pointing my camera at my computer screen. But when you're saying scan, like if I'm using it on my phone, what am I scanning then?
Loretta, you also can use Workday using a web browser on your phone as well.
What's the URL?
It's going to be, I believe, workday.osu.edu, right, Bonnie?
Correct.
But if you could replicate the directions to use the mobile app, that would be good. And one option could be that if you're, you could use your browser until you're able to get to a PC or a laptop. But you can use your browser. The only thing about the app in the browser is there are some things that may not work quite as well just because of the complexity of certain things. I personally would suggest not to try to post a job requisition using a phone, but
Oh, no, this is only for when I'm at home doing my health check and I'm clocking in and out. That's the only thing I'm doing at home. I am working completely on site. So, you know, it's just that I figured that just to make life easier to do it the right way by using a web clock as opposed to like coming to work later and then having to manually enter the time. I know that auditing made a big deal about us, you know, using the web clock as opposed to entering time because that was supposed to decrease chances of fraud. You know, now obviously I think you can trust me, but I mean, we have students that, you know, God knows what they do, and I've heard people have been fired. And so I thought that was the whole logic behind forcing us onto a web clock, is to decrease the fraud.
so yeah, you could still use the web browser version on your phone as well for timekeeping.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Can a job aid be, somebody else's job requisition rather, be copied and edited so that you could just basically tweak it rather than totally create something from scratch?
That's correct. So on that first screen where you go into the create job requisition, it gives you the opportunity to copy from an existing job requisition.
Bonnie, is that true for active job requisitions or job requisitions that have already been closed as well? So if I'm a supervisor and I create a job rec and that position is filled, but it opens again, let's say in 3 months, is that feature still available, or does it have to be an active rec to copy and paste?
I think I'd probably have to test that.
Okay.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, so that can be something that we follow back up with this group on.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
So I wanted to give a shout out to Bonnie, who is quite busy right now because Enterprise Project is going live very shortly. So I wanted to thank her very much for coming to talk about student hiring. This was a special request, and also our HR colleagues. This is an important feature that we always do. So I'm grateful for all of them taking their time out for this. And again, this is recorded, so as soon as possible, I will share the recording information. And if there are no other questions, I do want to remind you that we do also have one at 3 to 4 today for purchasing.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you to everybody for taking the time out and attending. I will do kind of one last shameless plug for folks. If you have not completed your Workday Manager training, to please do so by January 3rd, as well as leveraging the lab tenant to get in and start to play around before the system goes live. Rando and I, Danny, we will be here to support once Workday goes live. In any way that we can do so. So please don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions that you might be able to. I know Danny is also hosting office hours starting December 30th through March 31st from 11 a.m. to noon. That's every Wednesday. So every Wednesday from 11 to noon, I think that's something that you can join. And then Rando and I are gonna also think about, hosting office hours so that we can make sure that we're supporting as well. So we'll get that information out to you as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and a happy holiday season. Take care.
Hey, Danny, can I ask you a question?